Hi, I'm Oliver Bousset, and welcome to Business Not 101, a podcast that explores the uncommon side of business. In today's Founders Interview series, I am joined by Lindsay Tjepkema, CEO, co-founder of Casted, the first and only amplified marketing platform and B2B podcasting solution. Hi, Lindsay. Thanks for joining us on Business Not 101.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. It's such an interesting company you have. So let's get right into it and give us your 60-second business pitch.
Awesome. Yeah. So Casted, we exist to really introduce marketers to the next generation of content marketing. And I say that because as a content marketer, somebody who spent 15 years in marketing in B2B, I saw content marketing kind of get started, become really valuable, kind of grow up and actually start to become antiquated because everything is based around, blogging and text-based content and keywords and search engines. And that's all great. Those are all wonderful things. But it tends to prioritize algorithms over audiences, right? And so who suffers for that? Actually, everyone, the business, the brand, the audience. So at Casted, what we're saying is, hey, what if we just started in a different place and captured a great conversation like you and I are having and are going to have today, and we start there. We capture a great conversation. We turn that into the audio and video content that our audiences really love, as you and your audience know, because they're sitting here listening to us right now, and then wring that out. Use things like transcriptions and clipping and sharing and all sorts of different tools to really amplify that conversation across all those other channels. To, yes, the blog post, yes, the search engine, yes, the social media, get it into the hands of your sales team in a way that is much more effective and efficient for your sales and marketing teams, and also much more measurable in a way that says, how is your marketing strategy going, but also how is it impacting revenue? And all of that is in Casted in a process that we call amplified marketing.
That's so much, but it's pretty incredible. I love it. What was your aha moment? Was it really just doing podcasts or listening to podcasts and going, this is stale and needs to change? Group aha moment.
Yeah. So for me, as I mentioned, 15 years in B2B marketing, I've seen it from every angle: agency life, small business life, large corporation life. And most recently, before starting Casted, I was at a company I got brought in to run their content strategy, their global strategy. And as part of that, launched a podcast and a video series. And it was going really well. But I was shocked at the fact that there was just nothing to support me as a marketing leader or my marketing team in creating, launching, managing, and measuring this work that we were doing. There was nothing. There was a lot of, one-off tools and point solutions for podcasting, but none of them were made for B2B or enterprise marketing teams. A lot of them weren't even made for podcasting, right? So none of them really worked with the other content marketing platforms or tools or processes or strategies that we were using. And none of them measured what mattered to me as a marketing leader or to my CEO. Nothing could tell me what the impact it was making on our revenue, on our bottom line. So I set out, long story short, I set out to be the change I wanted to see and to create that platform that would not just help marketers use podcasting as part of their marketing strategy, which is, yes, that's great, we do that, but much bigger, and say, how do we actually introduce this, next generation of content marketing, and say, what if you did it this way? How much more effective and efficient could you be, and engaging could your content be?
That's really a good point. And when you started, I noticed you had two co-founders, Zachary and Adam, I think I remember that correctly. Did you bring the idea to them and then they were like, yes?
Yeah. So I'm very fortunate to have two brilliant co-founders. Adam Paterino heads up the product side of the business and Zachary Ballinger heads up the revenue side of the business. And I had already decided that I was doing this thing. I was leaving my role and was going to go start this business. And as someone who had sat in the seat of what would be our audience, I was kind of the domain expert, if you will. I had the vision and I knew what I wanted to do, but I couldn't physically build it, right? I'm not a product leader. And so I was searching for who that person could be, whether it's a co-founder or somebody to just, help me build this product. I was asking around and somebody said, hey, you should talk to Zachary Ballinger. We actually worked at that company that I was leaving. So it's not him, that's not his domain, but he probably knows some people. So I reached out to him and he, said, hey, I'm doing this thing. I don't know if you know anyone. And he was like, what's your phone number? I'm calling you right now. And so he, as I mentioned, he heads up the revenue side of the business. And so he got right into his sales pitch and said, it's me and, my friend, Adam Paterino, who I had also worked with. We didn't know each other well. They know each other really well. They've been friends for a long time, but the three of us had all worked at this company, but just kind of breathed the same air. We didn't know each other, but he was like, it's us. And this is why, I'm your revenue leader. He's your product leader. The three of us together could really do this thing. We know B2B SaaS, we know marketing technology. We have to do this together. And so I was not convinced right away, but through more conversations and more getting to know them and their vision for what they could do and how we could do this together, they were right. And
That's great. And it's really lucky in a way because finding co-founders is so difficult. I think it's probably one of the hardest when you go start a business, and really having that synergy to be able to have the conversation and say, oh, wow, we understand each other.
Yeah. Adam had already left and was doing something else. And it was just it was good timing for Zachary, and it just kind of worked out. But you're right that, man, finding co-founders, I talked to a few other people and it just wasn't a great fit. They were wonderful people, but it is incredible. I mean, you jump into something like this, you start a business, and I hate all of the, analogies around dating and marriage and stuff, but it really is. It's entering into this covenant with each other where you're going to go through some really hard times. You're going to go through some really exciting times. You're legally bound to each other in many ways. You have to trust each other. You have to communicate. And for us, having the three of us has been really good because there's always somebody, it's an odd number. There's always somebody to kind of step back and say, hey, the two of you need to talk this out, or this is what I'm hearing. And, we're very different in a lot of ways, but we're very similar in a lot of ways. And, shared vision and shared passion for what this could be, not just as a product and a market opportunity, but also as a workplace culture and the type of team that we wanted to build. And that cannot be overstated. I mean, it is so important to be aligned, not just on, hey, what are we going to build as far as the product's concerned, but what's the team going to be like? What's important to us? What are our non-negotiables, and what matter? How does the people side and the team side and the culture side of everything matter to us? That has been so important to us.
Yeah, that's a great point. Company culture, and certainly in the startup world, it's something that either gets ignored or I find sometimes over amplified, and then it becomes the sole focus point, but not the product. And then usually that also is a problem.
It's true.
Yeah, great points. What was your biggest roadblock before you met your co-founders? Was it a technical aspect, or you had your whole idea laid out in your whiteboard and said, I'm ready to go, but I just don't know how to build it? Or was it something else that was blocking you?
Well, I was lucky to have them. Let's see, my day one, I left my company, and my first day officially in this seat was April 29th, 2019. And Zachary started May 1st. And Adam was kind of part-time as he finished up some projects that he was working on and started June 1st. So they were right there with me. It wasn't months and months. But that said, until we the three of us really started, to your point, whiteboarding and hashing out what we were going to, what step one, I really valued their thoughts and kind of where they wanted to get started, because as our potential, as our theoretical user, right, as somebody who knows what it's like to be our audience, I wanted to do everything. I wanted to make the full-on platform right away, and I wanted to boil the ocean. And they were like, okay. They just kept narrowing it down, and they were like, it's minimum viable product, minimum. What's the bare minimum? And they did a really good job of that with me. And then also the three of us together said, okay, but it's not just about me. It's not just Lindsay's thoughts. I mean, I'm one person. How do we go make sure that what we're doing is most likely to be successful? So I started interviewing people and talking to as many marketers, as many potential customer types, as many people our ideal customer profile, about what this thing could be, the challenges that they faced with podcasting, with content marketing, with content strategy, with marketing in general, sales and marketing, and got tons and tons of feedback that informed that MVP, that product, and also some of our early messaging and how we were going to reach out to and appeal to potential customers.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah. The interviews, I think it's one of the hardest parts of starting any business, is really just interviewing people and understanding, explaining your pitch in 60 seconds to somebody who may never have heard a pitch before. And the first ones, I remember when we had done a startup years ago, we did it and we were standing around at a corridor, just stopping people. That was one of our mentors, just stop people and ask. And I remember so many blank faces looking at us okay, I have no idea what you're talking about. It would just be like, would you buy this? And they're like, yes, okay. And they walk away and you're like, I don't think they're going to buy it.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's a hard one, I find. It's easier coming up with an idea than interviewing. That's my 2 cents about it.
Yeah, I think, but it's so important. And for me, it was an opportunity to reach out to first, everyone in my network, and it's first thing, like, I'm not selling you anything yet, but if we build something great and you're interested, I count on it that I will. But give me your thoughts, give me your insights, and people are really, really willing to help. People want to see each other succeed, and they want to be a part of something exciting, and people want to be cheerleaders, they want to be supporters. So yeah, it can be awkward, it can be tough to reach out to people, but 9 times out of 10 people are excited, especially when they know truly all I want is your thoughts. Like, I'm not going to ask you for anything else. I literally just, and then stick to it. Like, please, by all means, if you're going to go out and do interviews, stick to your guns and say, like, I just want your insights, and don't try to sell them.
Yeah, there's a lot of different thoughts. Like if you go to Y Combinator, one of their ideas is that you should pre-sell it. And
Hmm.
if you get pre-orders, that means you're right.
Hmm.
And other people are like, no, you should get a whole bunch of interviews, get a whole bunch of data, and then see if you're right. And
Yeah,
it's a conflict of,
a
I
little bit
guess,
of both.
yeah. And both work. Like I've seen both in action and both do work, but it is something that it's still daunting because no matter what, even if it's not a sales pitch, it is a sales pitch because you're
Hmm.
still selling yourself and you're selling your vision. And if it's a flub, it's you who also looks like you didn't know what you're talking about, right?
Exactly.
So,
Well, I think that's where it's so important to, and this I credit, again, my two co-founders that boiled it down. Like, if we had been heads down for 6 months building a platform with all kinds of features that I felt like we really needed, yeah, that could have been a huge waste of time, and time is money. But they kept boiling it down. They were like, what's the one thing? What's literally the one thing? And that one thing is not going to make us $1 million tomorrow. It's going to get us in the game, and then it's another thing, and then it's another thing. And that was the approach that worked for us. There's no one size fits all, but that's what worked for us. And just through all those conversations saying, okay, this one thing, if we fix this one thing early on, kind of like you said, would you buy it? And then kind of there, yeah, that's both. Then there is kind of the pre-selling, to use your words, of what's next. Like, you sell the vision and you sell the roadmap, and you say, hey, join us now with this one thing that we have, because this is where we're going. And that worked for us. That worked for us.
that's great points. And so this sort of leads into my next question, which is one of the questions that I think it's really hard for a lot of people. I used to do a meetup where we'd help small businesses and entrepreneurs and startups and wannabes trying to launch their businesses. And one of the questions is always around marketing. And obviously you have a lot of experience with marketing. But how did you guys come up with your first fans? Was it out of your interviews, or was it really having to build that network of, the first true 1,000 fans that really were backing up your product? Because any investor, that's what they want to see, right? They want to see a list of
Mhm.
people, they want an email list, they want to see something before they put a penny in. So how
Yeah.
did you guys go about it? And obviously, I assume it's something you were doing as opposed to your two other co-founders.
It was all of us. And truly, I think it started with that those interviews. I mean, I talked to the first month, at least 4 to 6 weeks, that I was, sitting in this role. That was literally my job. I was like, I can't start building the thing. I just got to start having conversations. And so, it looking back, what made the most sense to me was to go have conversations. If I was talking to you, it would have been like, okay, so podcast or not podcast, have you ever, would you, why not? If you did, what were the challenges you faced? What are the perceived challenges you would face? And just having those conversations and saying, okay, because here's what we're thinking. Here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I think is broken. Here's what I think the opportunity is. And just that passion, again, kind of looking back, it wasn't something that we thought about strategically, but it just kind of happened naturally. And I think it made all the difference. Having the passion for the vision that could be, and what this could be, that started to get people excited. I mean, that was 75 to 100 conversations of people saying, Lindsay, this is really cool. Like, keep me posted. And, that keep me posted turned into, okay, we're starting a podcast, of course. Like, we have to have our own podcast. Listen, have a listen. Let us know how it is. Join me. Come be on the show. And, just honestly, all those conversations, which is really what Casted is based on, which is have great conversations, bring other people into them, let other people see and hear your passion, and turn that into deeper engagement in a way that can be measured. So really, that's what it looked like, was lots and lots of conversations, sharing your passion, sharing my passion, sharing the vision, and then turning that into not just conversation for conversation's sake, but I took tons of notes and shared those with Adam and Zachary. And Adam turn those into notes about what we could build and what he was hearing most often, and common threads and common themes about what the needs were about the market. And Zachary really started to turn into, if there was someone who was truly, truly interested, he would follow up. We turned it into early messaging. We heard lots of problems and lots of desires and wants and needs and challenges, and turned that into our earliest messaging. And so, yeah, I think that's what did it, is we were just kind of right on the ball with, talking to people and turning that into action.
Yeah, it's really a sort of it's an exploratory way of going about it, because you guys are sort of building organically. You're not, this is not something you set up. And sort of leads into my next question, which is, did you guys have an initial marketing plan? And this is funny because my background is also marketing, and I always think I'm probably the last person who does a marketing plan.
Yeah.
I think, well, shouldn't I be the first thing? But no, it's like everything else. And then marketing is like, oh yeah, we'll put something out. But it's funny how many people I've talked to in the past who their marketing plan is either so intricate or very like, oh yeah, it's like no one, stick a note on the wall.
Yeah.
So how did you guys start off?
So we have always felt like we needed to be our own best use case, right? So, this approach that we're presenting to the world, that's really this next generation of content marketing that we're now calling amplified marketing. Have a conversation, turn it into rich audio and video content, and then ring it out, amplify it across all of the channels. We've been doing that since day one. So we turned those conversations, even though we weren't recording them early on, into content. Like, hey guys, I keep hearing that X, Y, and Z is a big challenge. Let's write a blog post about it and let's put that out there. Started a podcast within our first couple months, and had great conversations talking about the power of podcasting in B2B businesses, to one, tell the world, yes, podcasting, like business podcasting, B2B podcasting, enterprise podcasting is a thing. It is making a change. It is something that's really, really valued and valuable to a lot of brands that you already know and love and respect. Hear why, hear how, and started having those conversations. And we didn't leave it as a podcast. Like, again, from day one, we started ringing it out. We started pulling clips and sharing those on social media and sharing those on our blog. And that was the plan. So, did I take time and go like sit in, a quiet space and write it all out like I did in school? No, but the vision was very clear to me as far as, if I had to document it, step 1, step 2, step 3, have a conversation, record it, publish it, ring it out. And it's gotten more and more complex since then. But to answer your question, yes-ish ? Yes, we had one. I think partially because I don't know how not to, and Adam and Zachary were along the same lines. They were like, okay, what's the plan, even if we're just going to talk through it? So
since your product really is a software as a service, right? How would you tell somebody to go off and market that?
Yeah. So I'm going to sound like a broken record, but start with a conversation, right? So find the very, very, very first steps are, who's it for and why are you doing it? So who's it for? Since you have a marketing background too, I'm sure that's where your mind naturally goes all the time. Who is my audience? I mean, is it everyone? No. Is it all marketers on the planet? No. Is it this certain sector? Is it, content marketers early in their career who are really excited about taking on that next stage and are really mostly interested in, the audio and video content, right? Like that's a niche within a much larger ocean of potential audience members. So you got to be really clear about who's it for, and then why are you doing it? Is it brand awareness? Is it lead generation? Is it to grow your company? Is it to engage your customers? Is it to gain more exposure to the thought leaders in your company? Like there's lots of, it seems like the why are you doing it is everybody's like, oh, well, to grow the business. Well, what does that mean? What does it mean for you and for your business? Because it's not the same for everyone. So we're really clear about those things, and then go back to that who's it for and start thinking about who would they want to hear from. Right? So once you know your audience really well, start to think about who in your company, among your customers, among your partners, among your, the influencers in your space, would they be most interested in hearing from? And it doesn't mean it has to be the most famous people or the big authors or the big speakers. Like maybe it is, but maybe it's, the people in your company who just have really something really interesting to say to that audience, right? So who's it for? Why are you doing it? And who are they going to be most interested in hearing from? And start there and just start having those conversations. Make the host someone who can have those conversations naturally. So it's not always the CEO or the CMO. It's going to be somebody who knows that audience well and can really ask great questions and really pull out just natural conversations. It's going to be engaging to listen to and interesting. Record it. That's the easy part. Just record it and, turn it into a podcast, audio and or video content. And start there. And then from there, start to think about the other ways you can use it. How can you use clips? How can you make a page? Where can it live on your site? You got to own that experience. So you're not just sending everybody away to Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You're using those as a beacon to draw people to your own site, right? So how can you house that show on your site, give people a great experience so that they want to keep coming back and that they think of you when they're consuming that content? And then start to think of like other ways that you can use that too. How can you go in and create a related blog post related to whatever that guest had to say? How can you pull clips and share those on social media to get people interested to be like, oh, I think I might want to listen to the rest of this conversation. How can you get it into the hands of your sales team? What clips, what parts of that conversation could be really valuable to your sales team as they go out and try to have more conversations? Just once you have that nugget, that conversation recorded, there's so many other ways to use it. And that often gets overlooked. And I'm starting to see that is changing. And that's, what we're advocating for is start with the conversation and then think about all the different ways you can use it. And then you start to get into the big conversation about how you're going to measure it. But just start there.
That's brilliant. Something else you were sort of talking about was other content creations out of the conversation. So obviously converting that to Word. How do you feel about newsletters? Are you something that you guys are looking at? Certainly pertaining to podcasting.
Yep. I think they're great. I'm going to shout out to and embarrass our marketing team a little bit. Holly Pells is our VP of marketing, and Kirk McCullough and Byron Elliott Byron's our designer and Kirk writes our newsletter. It's amazing. And if you haven't subscribed, I'm shameless plug for our newsletter, because they do. And I'm talking about it not just because it's ours and I want people to subscribe. Honestly, not at all. I'm so impressed with the way that our team is taking, the conversations that we have and the content that we're creating and making it really, really interesting, because again, they know who it's for and they know why they're doing it, right? So they're getting really fun with it. They're using pop culture references not because that's for everyone. That's not a great idea for every audience, but it's a great idea for ours. I mean, we're talking to content marketers who really appreciate really great content. And yes, of course, I think the short answer here is how else can you use your content? And if that's in form of a newsletter, email works great, and you have, to your point, you have a lot of ability to track its effectiveness. So yeah, repackage what you've already got, make sure you're feeding it to your audience in different ways. But again, to the credit of our team, and what I think they're doing so well is that they're constantly thinking about, how do we make this interesting? How do we make it not just a recap of like, we made some content, we want you to see it, we don't think you've seen it yet, so we're going to put it into a newsletter that we want you to read. Like, that's very self-centered, right? Like, why should anybody be interested in that? When if you really are putting yourself into the mindset of your audience, it can be really fun and creative to just make it great content. And so if you're going to do it well.
Yeah. So if I understand correctly, you guys are taking parts of your conversation, but then creating new content around that. One of the things that you always see a lot of marketers, and certainly online and LinkedIn, they always say, well, take what you have, put it into Word. Now you have a blog post. But it's exactly what was said on the podcast to a different audience. But I don't always agree with that, because I wonder if the audience also wants to read. Yeah. And they may not just want to listen all the time. They may also want to read. And now you're rehashing the exact same conversation. Exactly. So you're saying create something brand new out of the content's sort of data points that you've created.
Yeah, I mean, I think listen, do what you can and do what makes the most sense for you and for your audience. But I think, use in my perspective, use the conversation as a starting point, right? A great content marketer, a writer, like even if you're working with a freelance writer or something, being able to say, here's this conversation we had, here's a transcription. We offer transcription with every single, episode or file that's uploaded into Casted, but there's lots of other ways. We were talking about that too, that you get a transcription of every show. How do you start with that conversation and leverage a transcript to wring it out, to dig deeper? You're a writer will love that. Will love having a resource to get into where they can actually hear the words that are being said by those thought leaders, by those subject matter experts, instead of having to ghostwrite on their behalf, right? So that's the way I look at it: is source content, source data that really kind of acts as a source, as a resource for your content marketing team, for your social media team, for your writers, for your designers to be able to get into and pull their pieces, pull their nuggets out of it to make more from it. Like, again, once you really know who your audience is, that whole team, even if the team is one person, can get into it and say, okay, what else can I do with this? How can we dig deeper? How can we provide our audience with more value, more ways to consume this content than simply listening to the podcast, which is great. But what if they, have a yes and they want to do more?
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's something that people need to understand. It's something that we often heard in marketing. And it's like people just sort of like, well, I'm one person, I'm two people. How do we create that? And that's great points. Get to know your avatar and really get to create from the content you've already created and just keep going. Let me ask you a question about Clubhouse. Clubhouse is obviously a live audio. How does you feel that's going to impact or change or influence also podcasting, but your business in marketing in general? Because that's something that's a new sort of format. And it peaked obviously over Corona. Now, as things are calming down, it's sort of also calming down. So what's your thoughts on that?
I love the attention that it has brought to conversation, right? Especially in this crazy last year, almost a year and a half now that we've all experienced. It drew to the surface the importance of connection and how much people are wired to be connected and to engage with each other. And the cool thing about Clubhouse is that two people could start a conversation and other people could join in, just like being out in public. Two people are having a conversation, other people join in, and that's great and that's natural, and it fostered that connectivity. Again, it drew attention to how much people love conversation, being a part of it, listening into other conversations. There's nothing like it, especially audio conversations. People are listening to us right now, and I'd be willing to bet they all feel much like more connected to you and I than they did before, because they're literally listening into a conversation that you and I are having. And so I love that. And I love, now it's Twitter Spaces, and Facebook is doing some stuff too. I love how much attention it's brought to everything. Now, I'm curious to see what happens from here as far as, but what do we do with it? We're already starting to see some of that where you can record it and you can use it in other ways, which is not net new, right? It's like, okay, now you're recording conversations, which is something that we've all been doing for a long time. So it's kind of a different door into the same building. I'm excited about it. I think people are eager to be connected, or eager to have conversations, eager to have other people involved, and it's helping us to think about things in different ways so that we can make sure that people are getting what they want.
Yeah, that's a great point. I see it more as a live extension to podcasting. I honestly believe podcasting is a building block, sort of the foundation to a lot of this audio content. And then you're going into live podcasting, which people are going to feel much more comfortable just listening as they would to the radio. I think it's sort of heading back to that, which is fun in a way.
Is that funny? And I love that you said radio, because like a lot of us are talking now. Okay, so Clubhouse is a thing, which makes podcasts almost start to feel a little old. Like, of course, everybody's doing podcasts. But then you go back even further to radio. 1940s, that people were all sitting around the radio, and before that even. So it's just interesting. And it just goes to show, again, what I was just saying about human connection. People have loved sitting around listening to other people talk since it was around a campfire, and it's just really cool to see what's happening, what technology is doing with it.
Yeah, that's true. We see that a lot. And I'll be curious to see where it goes down the road, but it's definitely something that it amplifies the voices, people have said. I'm seeing it also today from a different aspect, which is a sales aspect. You see a lot of multi-level marketing comes out of these things. Yeah. I find it goes from this wonderful little idea to this very dark side very quickly. So podcasting, the person has a choice. They can shut it off. They can not download it. But the live one, you're sort of stuck in the conversation until you realize, like, okay, this is not what I'm into anymore. So I wonder where that's also going to take it. But I found that podcasting sort of took a lot of people were saying it was going to disappear, but I was against it. And I see now podcasting has actually grown. But it's also interesting to see how many people launch podcasts and how few actually continue after 10 episodes. So it has sort of these waves of interest where people start their podcast and sort of drop it off. So that the number of podcasts still hasn't peaked, I think.
I totally agree. The being in it, especially from the B2B perspective, where businesses are starting podcasts or expanding the number of podcasts they have, I truly believe, and perhaps I'm biased because this is literally what I'm doing, but I truly believe we are just scratching the surface. The conversations that we're having and the way that they've changed over the last, year to 2 years since we got started, it's not should I, it's not should I do one, it's how do we do it better than anybody else? Or how do we do more? How do we it's becoming a more sophisticated conversation. People are talking about podcast networks and what else they can do with their shows and how to really use them to fuel everything else they're doing, as opposed to like, yeah, but should we do a podcast? Which I'm excited to see that conversation shifting into how do we get so much more out of this opportunity?
Yeah, I see that a lot too. And I think that's really interesting. And it's a great way to put it. People are starting to see the opportunities from just talking and
Mm-hmm.
having even their employees. I was listening to one podcast, which is a cleaning service. And the cleaning service is two employees talking about their experiences, which is sometimes very strange. And you're like, okay, but there's a person creating a podcast. And
Mm-hmm.
another part I noticed on podcasts, and I'm sure you've noticed too, is the level of quality. When I first started to listen to podcasts, when I had just launched, it was very low quality, like just
Mm-hmm.
basic recording. Today, I feel people are really putting a lot more energy into the better podcasts for the quality. It sounds almost like it's a Disney level production for every podcast. And I'm excited about it. But at the same time, I'm always like, that's a lot of work goes into it.
Mm-hmm.
As a podcaster, I realize that myself.
Yeah, it's true. The stakes are getting higher. But I would say, when it comes down to it, don't let that be a reason not to do it,
Yeah.
because expectations are higher. There are many more tools and companies out there, whether it's a service, an agency type service, or a tool that you can use. There's so much more support available now. I mean, it used to be high-end production with audio engineers and producers in a studio or by yourself in a closet, like with free tools. And now, I mean, that chasm between those two has closed, and there's kind of something for every budget of time and energy and team size and money. So don't be intimidated and hesitate. There's still opportunity to own your space and to really own that conversation. So just take a minute to find the right process.
Yeah, well said. Excellent. One last question I have before we go to our rapid round questions. Where do you see some of your marketing going? Are you going to go live with events? I see a lot of companies now that are certainly in the audio and the creation of audio. They're starting to create these live events, or obviously hybrid events or virtual events for today. Is that something you guys are looking at as well?
Mm-hmm. We are looking at, I don't want to spill any beans, but we're looking at what an event looks like for us. And we have an incredible list of customers that, not only are customers and they're wonderful and we're biased and we love them, but they're leaders in this space, and they're doing this, they're taking on this amplified marketing approach, and they're just getting incredible results both internally and externally. And so it's like, how do we share those stories? Yes, of course, to amplify our voice, but also to help others to see what's possible. And we're hoping that there are opportunities to get some people together live in person, later in the year, in a way that feels really safe to everyone and that actually is safe. But then also, how can we again be our own best use case and capture a ton of really great content and amplify it across all other channels and make it as accessible as possible to people literally around the world. So yeah, look for more news from us on that soon, because that's definitely something we're looking at.
Sounds very exciting. And I hear that from a lot of people. I think that's where people want to go. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I think that covers everything. So now it's time for the rapid round
Okay.
questions.
I'm
Are you
ready.
excited? All right,
I'm
excellent.
ready.
So one of the first questions, and originally I was going to sort of spin them around, but one question I love to ask everybody is, what is the one book you would tell the audience to read? That's something that changed your business life.
There's so many. Anybody who knows me knows I'm a really big reader. I listen to a lot of my books, which I'm sure is not surprising. Anything by Brene Brown, because I love her. And one of these days we're going to meet and she's going to realize that we're best friends. But if I had to pick one, probably Dare to Lead.
Next question. What is your number one productivity hack?
Taking a good look at my calendar and moving things around, which sometimes feels like I'm procrastinating, and possibly it is, but it's my best way to hold myself accountable for, this is when I'm going to be productive. Like in my weeks, I have 3 kids and a husband who travels, and my weeks look different every week. So taking a look at the week ahead and just saying, what do I need to move to be most productive, to fit in the things that matter most, and kind of fine tune the week ahead. And that's probably it.
That's so funny. So many people would say my Google Calendar. And I'm thinking of all these, creators of these agendas and all these programs. And it's just like, it's Google Calendar. It's free.
It's so true. Sometimes the simplest things, and because we also have our own ways to do it. And that, I don't know, that works. That one thing works for me.
Yeah, I also use it, and I journal every day too. And I put in my top action list so I can get those, 3, 4 things done every day.
Yeah, I love it.
Sometimes it still doesn't happen sometimes, but I
Right.
try.
But you're thinking about it, which
That's it.
is part of it, right?
Exactly. That's what I tell myself in
Mhm,
my
mhm.
ultimate procrastination. My last question is, how do you relax? What is your, certainly now you've said 3 kids, traveling husband. It is a lot of work. Now you're a mom and a business owner and a founder and doing all this work. So how do you relax?
I don't do that very well, but I'm getting better. I mean, just to be perfectly honest, people who know me well are like, Lindsay, what are you going to say? I try to, I mean, this is simple things. Like my ultimate relaxation hack is I've gotten really into the Marvel Avengers series thanks to my co-founders. Now we're obsessed. My 3 kids are boys, and I love, not that you have to be a boy to love Avengers. I love Avengers, but they really got into it. And so I just, when we're all home, we just like eat an easy, like out of the freezer into the oven dinner that we all snuggle up on the couch and watch a movie. Like that's just the most relaxed I can get. So you got to find ways, even if it's something simple and seemingly stupid when you say it on a podcast, whatever pushes that button to get you to kind of unwind a little bit, you got to lean into it.
I think it's fun hearing different people's ideas. Like some people have Zen, some people think yoga, all kinds of things. Some people take walks in a mountain, and other people watch movies. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's just fun. I think that's the fun part of listening to what works
Yeah.
for them. That's really
Yeah.
cool.
It's true.
I want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. It was wonderful.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks again.